सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमतो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकरोत्। अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मेस्तु तदात्मनि निरते य उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Page 111. यदि मन्यसे सुवेदेति दह्रमेवापि नूनम् त्वं वेत्थ ब्रह्मणो रूपम् यदस्य त्वं यदस्य देवेष्वथनु मीमांस्यमेव ते मन्ये विदितम्। After having introduced the student who asks a very pertinent, profound question, wherein his question is, Keneshitam patati preshitam manaha kena prana prathama praiti yuktaha keneshitam vachamimam vadanti kau devo yunakti. Who is that who is prompting? The teacher, in several big strides, though starting from the same vocabulary, same standpoint as the student, he says, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyat. Having said that, he immediately takes it to a very subtle, beautiful, higher conscious principle. Very step by step, he takes him there. Having taken to that standpoint, every teacher wants the student to know, understand, experience that which is being pointed by the Shruti as the immediate, personalized, intimate experience of that Supreme and nothing less. It is not that the teacher is trying to make a environment of people that are in constant praise, running around in what Hindi we say, chamchagiri. That is not what is required. That is not the purpose. Otherwise, the entire motive gets lost. So, as soon as this much was explained in the earlier chapter, the teacher immediately checks the student and puts the perspective in the right place. He says, Yadi manyase suvedeti. In your books, if you see italic one on the top of suvedeti in the mantra, in the original mantra, have you got it? That has to be shifted, that one has to be shifted to the next word. Daharam evapi nunam, that daharam evapi, put one there and see the footnote. It is dabhram evapi nunam also is another read. Yadi manyase suvedeti dabhramevapi nunam. So whatever is spoken in the first chapter, आपको समझ में आया? Did you all understand it? And obviously the student says, what? That was so straightforward. That was so logical. Of course I understood it. If you consider that you have already understood it, dabhram eva api nunam, you are nowhere close to it. What a stunning, shocking statement that the teacher says. Literally, the teacher seems to challenge as though the very understanding or the grasping power of the student. But that is not the case. The teacher is trying to point at something much subtler than whether the student has grasped it or not, and challenge that you have not grasped anything. Yadi manyase suvedeti, if you have come to the conclusion that yes, I have now grasped this concept, then you have failed the entire first chapter. That was just a mere test. And in that test after the first chapter, what do you call this? Slip test. They have that 10 mark. In that slip test, the student has royally slipped. Yadi manyase suvedeti dabhramevapi, you are nowhere close, not even a little. Nunam. Limit tending to zero. Your understanding, nunam, limit tending to zero. Why is the teacher saying so? In the earlier chapter, it was clearly explained that this is pointing towards an intimate, intuitive, subjective experience. That none of the instruments, organs of perception, organs of action, the entire realm of antakarana, mana, buddhi, are incapacitated to experience that supreme. What is the field of the organs of perception, the outside field of objects, things, beings. What is the field of the mana? It is feelings and emotions. What is the field of the intellect? The field of intellect is ideas, concepts. If we conclude that I have understood it, I have gathered the entire information given, now I have understood it because I, meaning the intellect, can conceptualize it. Then the intellect has only gotten the raw data as a concept, but not the subjective, intuitive experience. Making it, turning this entire chapter, the first chapter, into a conceptualized idea. If in today's world I say, you make it into a PowerPoint presentation for your own intellect. Then we have not even understood it a little. Because whatever is explained, that which is illumining, that which is empowering, it is not the understanding, the grasp is not from the supreme standpoint. For the individual seeker, they look at it from the standpoint of reflected consciousness only. If you bring back your memory as to when we explained what is Jivatma, then we immediately say the individuality or the ego. I am not asking about synonyms. It is not just one entity, it's a conglomerate, it is a mixture of several layers put together, and all of them have to be included. What all have to be included? The first is the ever existing presence of that Paramatma Chaitanya. Ever existing, because there is not a space or time where it exists not. Now, as soon as in that presence of that Paramatma Chaitanya, there is a intellect of all the different services of the layered body, mind and intellect. The intellect is the subtlest in which there is a clear reflection. From here, when I see with the light and the ambience, there is one aspect, because of the lights there is shadow, but apart from the shadow there is also a slight reflection on the floor because of the smooth polish that is of of the chair, you sitting on it, the feet on the everything is reflected, but it is not very clear. But supposing this was laid down as a mirror, or when you stand in front of the mirror, that distinct clarity of the reflection is very obvious. Similarly, the best reflection happens in the intellect. So what is the first layer? Ever presence of the ever existing Paramatma Chaitanya. The second is in that intellect this Paramatma Chaitanya reflects. Why does it reflect? It is by its nature of its surface, it will reflect. See, long before the glass and the chemical that is pasted in the background of that glass which gives us the reflection. If you go to Kerala, there traditionally there is a compound that is amalgamated, mixed, which is even today a trademark secret that is not shared beyond that few families. After having mixed it, they pour it into the mold or a shape of which size and shape that mirror should be. And then there is a long process of polishing its surface that it becomes as good as or even better than the mirror. A very costly, like just a small piece, 5 inches by 2 inches, hand mirrors will cost you several thousands. Because it is long lasting, it is like a heirloom piece which can go through generations. We have seen that these mirrors that today we have, nowadays they don't even use the glass, they use the acrylic, and on the back of the acrylic the chemical is pasted, and after a few years it starts fading, it starts getting corrupted, it starts eroding. This mirror doesn't. And the depth of clarity, once you look into it and look at the normal mirrors that we have, is so different. The intellect is like that polished surface. As soon as that Paramatma Chaitanya, the intellect exposes itself, there is a reflection. And the reflected also has a similar quality as the source's nature. With the intellect's capacity to reflect, we have the differences between man to man, man to woman, each individual. The reflection is different. It is similar, but it is the capacity of the intellect to reflect. Not just the human form, any other being, the reflected surface, if it is not that sharp, like in the lower forms of animals, there is an intellect, but it is a muddied intellect. So the reflection is only to a certain extent. Like the bulbs, electricity is connected. There are some which are very bright. There are some which glow yellow. There are some which glow in pure white color. Some very dim. All these differences are the instrument. Similarly, the intellect is different and the reflection is different. And that reflection, the intellect readily identifies with. There is a bonding. There is an identification that happens. This is the start of the ego, the individuality. Having identified with that layer, it then inducts these qualities of the reflected consciousness and the identity to the next grosser layers, whichever is the next inductive surface. So the intellect passes it on to the mana. On the parallel, there is also chitta that also gets inducted. Then the organs of perception, then the organs of action. The entire body is, the physical body is permeated by this reflected consciousness. What is pointed is that supreme. What is understood is the reflected consciousness as a concept. The reason I am pausing is I am letting it sink because this is a very subtle topic. Because we make the same mistake. The trouble is we are trying to intellectualize it. What is it that I am not getting? I thought I understood it yesterday also. And here the mantra says, if you think you have understood, you have not understood anything at all. Because we are struggling to conceptualize it. It is not something that will fall in the realm of conscious principle. The words that the Shruti explores in pointing at the Supreme, the words that are used by the teacher, the master, the guru, they are all pointing at it. It can only be indicatively pointed at. So the example that Gurudev gives in the very book. So he went to Swami Tapona Maharaj, Gurudev went to Swami Tapona Maharaj and said, why do you always give indicative? Why can't you give it directly? Shruti, because of the words, maybe it is limited. You are seated in that experience, why can't you give it to me directly? So Tapon Maharaj says, बता दूंगा, पहले पानी पिला. And he immediately rushes to the pot. He said, नहीं, गंगा जी से लिया. So Gurudev rushes, if you have gone to Uttarkashi, though it seems like Ganga ji is right there, you have to climb down the hill and then go fetch the water. So he takes a lota, gets the water, and Taponji Maharaj swings that lota with water and says, what did I ask you? I asked you water. What are you bringing? A lota? Go get me water. The Gurudev just stood there in sudden shock. Initially wanted to react to it, but then Gurudev pleadingly says, all I can bring is water, but I have to use a lota. How can I bring that water without the lota? Then Taponji Maharaj said, similarly, therefore, just as the water cannot be carried without the medium, similarly the essence of this Upanishad, which is a subjective experience, has to be wrapped in these words as indicative only. Now you have to translate it through your Manana Nididhyasana to personalize it and subjectively establish yourself in it. Because the reflected consciousness is the right principle at this individual level. But we don't have to stop there with that concept saying, now I have understood it. Now we have to find the source. That source is not something which can be carried by words, which cannot be carried as an experience in through a concept. When the intellect's query is quenched, all the possible doubts that it has, all the possible unclear ideas have been clarified. Clarified to the point wherein the pointed is understood. Now, the effort of that intellect is to turn towards that source, and having turned towards the source, it has to abide in that source in utter, sheer, pure silence. The intellect has to merge into it. What do? We try to grab at it as a concept. It's not just you and me. Every single seeker has to go through this process. Unavoidable, right? See, in this room you can get in through 2 different doors. You have options. What if there is a cave, there is only one way in, one way out? You cannot avoid that route. You have to go through that one route only. And that one route is the very intellect. But as it is trying to conceptualize it, it is also laced with several layers of impurities. At this point, all the several layers of vasanas that we have carried forward and created in this present experience of life, it is layered by it. How many layers? All I can say is several. Unginat. Though the intellect is a very pure sattvic element as it is created, but the layers that we have added into it, it muddies the reflecting coat, the reflecting surface. These are called the vasanas, the impressions, the tendencies. Those have to be thoroughly scrubbed. See, hope you take the books home to read through Gurudev's commentary. So meticulously he elaborates this concept. He says there are 2 cleaning agencies to clean that muddied antakarana. One agency, the scrub. See, when you are cleaning the vessels, you have a scrub and then you have the soap. The scrub is called the Karma Yoga and the soap is called the devotion. Both have to be used to scrub through all these layers one by one meticulously. Wherein no responsibility is shied away from. सर उठा के सीना तान के face it. But while facing it, do it selflessly, do it non-egotistically, offering it to the highest altar. And necessarily there has to be a rigorous daily sadhana of associating this antakarana with the altar of that Supreme in a Saguna Sakara. Constantly there has to be puja, japa, upasana, and that upasana has to be intense. As I shifted here into Hyderabad and my room was getting ready, so somebody said, Swamiji, there is God everywhere. And then there is the temple also where we have our Parameshwara. Why do you need another separate altar in your apartment? In your living quarters? So I said, you have asked 2 questions. The first question is, though the air is everywhere, for your vehicle to run, your tires require that air to be conditioned in the tires. You cannot say that air is everywhere, therefore the tires don't require it. You are personalizing the ever existing air into that, whether the tire is tubeless or with tube, the air has to be personalized into it at a constant maintenance of certain psi. A little too hard or over psi, the tire becomes tough, non-malleable. Little too less, it becomes wobbly. When it is more, every crevices that which the car or the vehicle passes through will be amplified straight into your backbone. And if it is less, your control on the wheel reduces because the wheel is shaky. It has to be consistently maintained at a certain psi. Usually the cars have 36 psi in each tire. The two-wheelers have about 32. Depending on the size and the weight, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, 1 or 2 psis here and there. Therefore, the newer technology has a particular what do you call those? Sensors. Particular sensors installed to give you a constant feed if the PSI is appropriate. It impacts the vehicle, it impacts the mileage, it impacts every movement. Similarly, the mind has to constantly take the PSI. The personalized Saguna Rupa of that intellect being soaked into that Saguna, and that has to remain constant. Our present sadhana is once a day, that too if we are disciplined, that we remember Bhagavan in the morning. The rest of the day, we are so busy engaged, there is not even an idea of Bhagavan in there. How consistently should this Bhagavan and his presence be, that in and through every walk of life that Bhagavan must be there present. In order to inculcate this habit into us, our ancestors said, before you do anything, lekar Hari ka naam. When you are stepping out, you stop at your altar and do Jai Ganesha and then leave. As you are starting your car, you again do Namaskara to that little Murti that is there in your Jai Ganesha and then start. It is not just beginning. Adaucha Antyecha. Madhyecha. Meaning beginning, ending and the intermediary period. Are we connected to that divine? Is my intellect constantly soaked in that divine? It's a very temporary process that we inculcate. Kabhi hua, mumkin hua to. See, I have a view of the main road. Of the thousands that pass by in front of the temple of Parameshwara, I would say maybe 1% population or less than 1%. Step in, remove their chappal, look at Ganesha, look at Shivji's that big dome, and do namaskar, and then continue with their life. There is a walker that last 1 year that I have seen who walks, but along his, I think it is mostly the walk for the dog, therefore he is compelled to walk along. It's a big Alsatian. So walks in every day, removes his chappal, just enter the gate. Does namaskara to Bhagavan Ganesha in the corner and then looks up to that Shivji and does namaskara. The rest of the 99% pass by when such a loud presence of such a huge temple, it doesn't create a dent. Imagine how much louder should be the practice that should happen within. And how consistently should it happen. And how meticulous should be our day-to-day, wherein every act of karma should be visualized and executed in the absolute sense of karma yoga. That Siddhanta has to be applied. Not to be claiming like I am a big karma yogi. That is again another layer of ego. To dissolve that ego, to dissolve these impressions, these vasana layers, the intellect has to be constantly scrubbed, meticulously scrubbed, mercilessly scrubbed. How long should I scrub? The next question, logical question. How long should I scrub? As long as that antakarana doesn't have vehement vikshepa of its own. Vikshepa, the mind tosses things. And here pay the attention, because it is a very factual statement made, which we will have a lot of problem accepting it. Whatever is the prapancha that me, the antakarana, experiences, whoever, whichever thing, whatever intersections of different experiences is a loud expression of my own vasanas projected onto that creation. See, when you go to a movie, on that screen, the projector projects that which the film carries. If you go into the analog days, there used to be a roll of reel, and that would be passing through right in front of the projector, which it projects and hits the screen. Each one of us project onto this creation, and whatever is that we are experiencing as prarabdha is the projection of our own antakarana onto that world. So when we say I don't like this world, दुनिया बहुत बुरी हो गई है. Therefore Kabir Das ji says, बुरा जो देखन मैं गया बुरा न मिलिया कोई, आपन दिल झांकियो मुझसे बुरा न कोई. It is the same world that somebody is experiencing. One experiences it joyously. One experiences it miserably. How come? Why take different people? My own different mood swings decides how I experience the world. Isn't it? In Yuva Kendra, I usually give the example. You like ice cream. One fine Sunday, you sat down, you said, whole week I have worked, let me now splurge into some ice cream. A bowl full of it you took, you sat down. As you are scooping out, you get a text message. It says, Mr. Murthy, we regret to inform you that you have been, or your job has been terminated. Spoon, the ice cream, everything aside. Oh, तेरी ये क्या हुआ? Yesterday only I went and met the management and I proposed the project for at least next 1.5 years worth project. I also presented the budget, they approved it. There was not even a single clue given by anybody saying that I would lose my job. Frenetically you go out, call people, and your loving wife comes and says, "Pehले ice cream to khatam kar lo." That very ice cream, that which you took in the bowl very eagerly to splurge and indulge in that utter sheer frustration, what will be your answer towards that ice cream? भाड़ में जाए ice cream? ये हमारी जिंदगी की लंका लगी हुई है और तुम आइसक्रीम की बात करते हो? What is the sudden shift? That the same cup of ice cream doesn't feel appealing anymore. You call your HR, the line is busy. You call your manager, the line is busy. You call your manager's manager, the line is ringing but not picking up. Then you finally call your friends and they are also perturbed. Your colleagues that you work with, that they work under you, or you call and they are also perturbed. 1.5 hour of this turmoil. Again, the message pings. And it says, regret to inform you that the message went or came to the wrong Murti. You are in the coding department, the message of termination should have gone to the QR. The Murti who is working in QR. Your job is intact. Thank goodness. And then the wife says, "Aap khaoge ice cream?" You say, "Yes, ice cream for an ice cream." Get it? The same prapancha with one mindset, it looks so appealing. In the immediate next moment, it looks so non-appealing. It is not in the prapancha. It is what my mind with layered vasanas projects. I see good because the mind is layered like that. I see bad because it is layered like that. I see ugly because it is layered like that. It meaning my antakarana. I see what I see because what my layers of vasanas are projecting out into the world. not the other way around. Therefore, always the scripture says, want to bring a change? Where should the change begin? In three factors: I, me, myself. Helplessly we try to change the outside. Outside automatically changes. There is this person who is trying to sell his house, and for several months at length, his attempt to sell was failing. So finally, he puts a beautifully articulated ad in the paper, and the next day morning, he has had his cup of tea. He read through the newspaper, he saw that there was an ad. He glanced through it and said, "Chalo, there will be some people calling." Now the wife also comes with her cup of tea and sits down, picks up the paper, and as she is flipping, she looks through the ad, and one by one, she reads out the beautiful description of this house. And says, find out where it is. Because it just is so apt and suitable. This is what we are looking for to go into. And then at the end, she smiles and she says, I think this is the ad that you have given. We project, and our own projections create those turmoils. The entire creation, it is neither good nor bad. It is essentially divine. When compared to the Western or the Abrahamic religion and their perspective and our perspective in the Shastra, they say that all that which is good is divine. All that which is bad, ugly, horrifying is satanic. What do we say? That the creation is neither good nor bad. But what makes it good or bad? Andaz apna apna. Each one to their own perspective. What is what we project. What is the layer within is what we project. Now, if that layer is scrubbed thoroughly, what will it perceive? That which is essentially divine. Taking it one step further, in sync with the mantra here, as the scrubbing gets better and better, the thought projections start subsiding. Least agitations, more restfulness, more peace within, more contentment within. In such antakarana, because what do we do in different stages of our age? When we are in the brahmacharya ashrama, we are constantly projecting, ये कर दूंगा, वो कर दूंगा, ये उखाड़ दूंगा, वो उखाड़ दूंगा, I have to build so much. Nothing wrong. That is what it is. We project into the future. When we get old, we are projecting into the past. मुझे ये करना था, वो भी करना था. The mind is never without those projections, whether it is of anxiety, whether it is of future, whether it is of the past. Constantly it is agitated purely because of those vasana layers. And there is no shortcut to the self without scrubbing it. Now, what happens when you scrub it thoroughly? The intellect is matured, the intellect is prepared to a point wherein, when you sit on the seat of meditation, you come to see that this which that I am identified with is merely a reflection. Sometimes when you are sitting in a room or a hall, in a peculiar corner, because sun is in one direction and this is in exactly impossible direction, where you see the reflection. A tiny spot on the wall. I don't know if this ever happens. And then you are like, where is it reflecting from? वो छानते रहते हो. Then you see that somebody moves and the reflection is moving. And then you zone in there. That person is sitting in such a corner where the light rays are falling on the watch and the watch dial is reflecting. And when the hand moves, the reflection is moving. Have you ever pursued such? The intellect, when it is such pure, scrubbed thoroughly, the layers of vasanas are removed, it starts seeing the reflection clearly. Oh, is this what I am getting identified with? If this is a reflection, where is the source? When Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana happens rigorously, you reach to that point where you can clearly perceive that reflection. The entire earlier chapter was pointing to us to that reflected consciousness. Therefore, if you have grasped only reflected consciousness, not the absolute. Therefore, if you conclude saying Manya Suvedeti, I think I got it. You got nothing. Because you are still looking at the reflection. Yadi manyase suvedeti daharameva pimulam tvam vetha brahmano rupam yadasyatvam yadasya deveshu. What you are actually seeing is this Dyotana, the reflected, not the Brahman yet. How do I know the difference? If you are concluding that what I have understood is Brahman, then we have not experienced it yet. If you walk out of the first chapter with a clear understanding of the concept, then you have not understood. What is being pointed at is not the concept. The concept is grasped only of the reflected consciousness. Having reached to the understanding that it is reflected consciousness, then the intellect sits through to layer it out and turn its attention towards the source. This has to happen intuitively only. These days, the gadgets that you get, after getting the car, it took me at least a week to explore different buttons and knobs that are there. What functions which way? For the last 25 plus years, never had a TV. Never needed one. So in the apartment, they created a flat screen and then gave it the connection, and the connection gave a remote. It's been a year. I seldom sit down too, but whenever I sit, I am still exploring how to use that remote. And when one day I sit down calmly and keep, looking at different options, pressing different buttons, suddenly a spark ignites. Oh, this and that simultaneously, when combined with this, this reveals. Intuitively, you take the next step. Am I getting across? Children these days are so in tune intuitively to these gadgets. And I was shocked the day when I saw a 3-year-old, not 3-year-old, 3-month-old, no, 3-year-old, not 3-month-old, 3-year-old crawl to the parents' office desk, climb the chair in a very planned, methodical manner, that he can get onto the sofa which is on one corner. He pushes this office chair to that sofa, clings onto that sofa, climbs. The sofa's armrest, he climbs onto it and then slides into the office chair and then kicks the sofa that the office chair with the wheels moves to the table, then pulls himself close to the table. It is like a Mission Impossible scene by a 3-year-old. And he knows how to click. The screen is locked, he knows how to open it. The screen flares up, and then I think by memory, he knows how to open the music folder. And then he flips, and it looks very random push. But he flips, comes to that point which his loving song that he loves, he clicks on it and then starts swinging. You and I would have been scratching our head for several hours before we get to that point. Intuitively, they get to that point. Now, how does that intuition ignite in us? It would be the result of the cleansing of our antakarana. The purer it is, the higher is the intuition. The clearer and purer is our cleaned antakarana. It reminds me of Hanuman Chalisa again. Nijamanu Mukuru Sudhari. The mind of the reflecting surface, Mukuru, the mirror, Sudhari. All the dust that is laying on it has to be wiped out clean. The earlier two steps of Karma Yoga Siddhanta and Upasana or Bhakti cannot be avoided. It cannot be removed. Because I can read and intellectualize, you would stay stuck in that intellectualization only. And you would only be seeing the reflected consciousness, Deveshu. If the next step has to be followed through, having cleansed it thoroughly, that which you have already gathered through the Shruti, through the Shravana, Manana has been done intensely, investigate, interrogate into the concept of it. Then, looking at the reflected, you turn your attention to the Supreme. Even in the meditation class that we run, there is one concept that I always say. Even through japa, what is being pointed at, that initially the seeker has to do several thousands of rounds of it to come to a point wherein the mind is focused, the mind is attentive, the mind is alert, the mind is awake, the mind is conscious, it is not distracted. Having reached to that point, then the mantra as it concludes, the best diver into the waters is the dolphin. If you have seen these Olympic diving competitions, first I used to never get it because nobody explains it. Yes, almost everybody's launch looks spectacular. What is it that gives them the gold? How do they decide that this is the gold medal worthy? Is when they land. How splashless is your landing? How smoothly you land without splashing the water? You look at the dolphins, while they are moving forward, launch outside the water and then they go back. If you pause it and go in a slow motion observing it, not a single drop or a single ripple because of that movement. That seamlessly it should merge. Presently, the intellect is, I don't know the English word, there is a lot of chatpat inside. Let me grasp it, let me grasp this concept. Upanishad is giving me this concept. It is not about conceptualization. That will only ease the doubts of the intellect. Having reached to that point, the mind, the antakarana, when it turns within, dives seamlessly, ripplelessly into its own source. Having reached there is that pure silence. So it is not the mantra that is important. Mantra is important in the initial stage. At a later stage, the mantra is just a prop which will take us to that silence and to abide in that silence. What is our present condition right now? To repeat that one thought again and again without distraction, that itself is a difficult task. From one mantra repeated several times, which is difficult, then to reach to the next level wherein one thought has to be retained. That is what is Aham Brahmasmi. It is not a mantra to be chanted. It is a status to abide in. I am. That is the silence. But instead of putting that next necessary steps, if we stop right at the intellectualization, you are that far away from truth. Yadi manyase suvedeti, no na vedeti vedacha, atha tvam vetha brahmano rupam yadasya tvam yadasya deveshu athanu mimamsyamevate. Now this has to be ascertained, to be abided in. Thus the first mantra beautifully concludes. The next 3 days I'll be traveling, but as soon as I come back, I should be back by 21st evening. So from 22nd onwards, we will continue. So please post it in the group also. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.